Hello friends, welcome back to the online classes. Yesterday we had started a new chapter, lesson number 8, Mijbil the Otter, and we had finished half of the chapter yesterday. Today I am going to continue the chapter from the page number 107. The days passed peacefully at Basra, but I dreaded the prospect of transporting Mij to England and to Camusfera. The British airline to London would not fly animals, so I booked a flight to Paris on another airline and from there to London. The airline insisted that Midge should be packed into a box not more than 18 inches square to be carried on the floor at my feet. I had a box made, and an hour before we started, I put Midge into the box so that he would become accustomed to it and left for a hurried meal. In Basra, when the narrator was living there, that is in Iraq, the things were going on well. He and Mijbil were very good friends, and they both were, having a nice time there. Now it was time for him to go from Basra back to his place in England and to Camusferna. These two places, London and Camusferna, England, he had to go. Now the problem was how to carry Midge. When he inquired from the airline that the animals can be taken, the British Airways refused, that they don't carry animals. Then he had to ask some other airline, and one of the airlines consented to his request, and they said that it can carry, but he should be in a 18-inch box, square box, that which will be kept near to him, okay, when he is near to his seat. And that also, it was not the direct flight. He had to go to Paris, and from there he had to go to England. That was the airline, he had got the ticket, not the direct flight. So he asked someone to make the box of that 18 inches box and started keeping Mijbil in that, so that he has a kind of a custom to the box, to stay in the box for a couple of hours or some few hours, so that he started giving practice. So as soon as he got this box, he kept Mijbil in that and went for his meal. When I returned, there was an appalling spectacle. There was complete silence from the box, but from its air holes and chinks around the lid, blood had trickled and dried. I whipped off the lock, and tore open the lid, and Midge, exhausted and blood spattered, whimpered and caught at my leg. He had torn the lining of the box to shreds when I removed the last of it, so that there were no cutting edges left. It was just 10 minutes until the time of the flight, and the airport was 5 miles distant. I put the miserable Midge back into the box, holding down the lid with my hand. Now, when he came back from his meal, he saw that the room was very silent. There was no noise. Even the box was still. There was no movement in the box. No noise. Nothing. When he saw carefully, he saw from the sides of the hole and the other side of the box, corner of the box, he saw blood, and it was dried up. He was worried, tense. He immediately went, tore open the box, and saw Mijbil was panting. He was not able to breathe properly. Second thing, he was trying to tear it open. So maybe the pins which were there, which were stapled there, that pin might have gone to his mouth or onto his skin, and that's the reason that blood had come. Now there were only few minutes, a few hours to go to his flight. Now how to manage all these things? So he immediately and the airport was 5 miles away. So he had to run fast. So he put the box again, into the box, and closed with his hand. He closed the lid with his hand. I sat in the back of the car with the box beside me as the driver tore through the streets of Basra like a recoiling bullet. The aircraft was waiting to take off. I was rushed through to it by infuriated officials. Luckily, the seat booked for me was at the extreme front. I covered the floor around my feet with the newspapers rag for the rare hostesses, and gave to her a parcel of fish to keep in a cool place. I took her into my confidence about the events of the last half hour. I have retained the most profound admiration for that air hostess. She was the very queen of her kind. She suggested that I might prefer to have my pet on my knee, and I could have kissed her hand in the depth of my gratitude. But not knowing otters, I was quite unprepared for what followed. So, since he was late, he did everything fast, called a taxi and sat in there and ran. And the driver also was, going in a full speed like a bullet in the streets of the Basra. Anyhow, he reached the airport. The flight was about to take off, and the flight was waiting for him. The officers and everybody was standing over there, and they took him to the with the in a through the shortcut way to the airport to the flight. It was good. It was his luck. It was good for him that the seat he got was in the front, just extreme front it was, and the air hostess helped him to keep the spread the newspaper on the floor and keep Midge. Even she understood when he related his story that why he was late and all those things. She was a good air hostess, and she was kind of a good lady and a kind lady. So she suggested that if he wanted to keep Mitch on his lap, but then he was not knowing how he will behave, how he will behave or what he will do because he is in the box. So he did not take the risk. He was very happy that the air hostess was good to him and kind to him. Midge was out of the box in a flash. He disappeared at high speed down the aircraft. There were squawks and shrieks, and a woman stood up on her seat screaming out, "A rat, a rat." I caught sight of Midge's tail disappearing beneath the legs of a portly, white turbaned Indian. Diving for it, I missed, but found my face covered in curry. "Perhaps," said the air hostess with the most charming smile, "it would be better if you resumed your seat, and I will find the animal and bring it to you." So, Midge, the moment flight took off and Midge was in the box, he immediately came out of the box. Now, the lid was not closed, because he had torn apart. So he, came out of the box and straight away ran. Immediately, there was noise in the flight. People started screaming, shouting, and one lady just stood on the seat and started shouting that there is a rat, there is a rat. A fat man, an Indian, a Sardarji, was there. He also jumped out of fear. The narrator saw Mitch running. He almost saw the tail and he jumped to catch him. But he fell on the lap of another passenger, and he was eating something, and that fell on his face. The air hostess, the kind air hostess, came back to him and requested him to go sit on his seat. She will try to catch him and bring him to him. So again, he got up, gave a good smile, and sat on his seat. I returned to my seat. I was craning my neck, trying to follow the hunt, when suddenly I heard from my feet a distressed chitter of recognition. and welcome, and Midge bounded onto my knee and began to nuzzle my face and my neck. So he came back to his seat and he was trying to straighten his neck because he had jumped and got hurt. So he was just trying to make it all right. And as he was doing something on his neck, he heard the familiar noise of Midge. He saw Midge was sitting beside his feet and climbed on his lap and started nuzzling, that is, kissing or caressing on the face. Midge and I remained in London for nearly a month. He would play for hours with selections of toys, ping pong balls, marbles, rubber fruit, and a terrapin shell that I had brought back from his native marshes. With the ping pong ball, he invented a game of his own which could keep him engrossed for up to half an hour at a time. A suitcase that I had taken to Iraq had become damaged on the journey home, so that the lid, when closed, remained at a slope from one end to the other. Mitch discovered that if he placed the ball on the high end, it would run down the length of the suitcase. He would dash around to the other end to ambush its arrival, hide from it, crouching to spring up and take it by surprise, grab it, and trot off with it to the high end once more. So Midge and the narrator, they both stayed in London for almost 1 month. And here Midge had lots of toys to play, rubber toys, rubber fruits, balls, ping pong, lot of things were there. And he spent a lot of time in playing. Midge invented a new game with ping pong. There was a suitcase of his which he had brought from the Iraq, and while traveling, it had broken. The lock had broken, so it won't lock properly. So it will be little up. So once it will be like sliding. So Midge used to play in this suitcase. So what he used to do. He used to bring the ball, keep on the top side of the suitcase, and leave the ball. So before it reaches the other end, he will run and come back to the other side and try to catch it. Sometimes hiding, sometimes standing, sometimes jumping. Like that, many games he used to play with that, and he used to engross in this game for almost half an hour, or sometimes more than that. So there was no problem, there was no trouble with Mitch. He was enjoying with the ball and things, and the narrator also was happy that he has no problem anymore now. Outside the house, I exercised him on a lead precisely as if he had been a dog. Midge quickly developed certain compulsive habits on these walks in the London streets, like the rituals of children who, on their way to and from school, must place their feet squarely on the center of each paving block, must touch every seventh upright of the iron railings, or pass to the outside of every second lamp post. Opposite to my flat was a single storied primary school, along whose frontage ran a low wall some 2 feet high. On his way home, but never on his way out, Mitch would tug me to this wall, jump onto it, and gallop the full length of its 30 yards, to the hopeless distraction both of pupils and of staff within. So now outside his house, he started taking Midge outside the house, making walk, taking him for a walk, like other people. When we have dog, we take the dog for a walk. Similarly, he started taking the Midge outside for a walk, and people used to see the kind of strange creature. But for him and for Midge, there was nothing strange. They were going as usually. Now, Midge used to catch the children, their activities. He used to see that these children used to walk in a particular pattern type. If the boxes are there, they will go a particular box, then turn to other side and this side and everything. And if a lamp post has come, they go circling that. Some kind of activities they used to do. So Midge also copied these children, and he also used to walk. Now, where they were living, in front of it, there was a primary school. So, and the wall is not too high; it was just 2 feet, 2 feet high only. So, when they used to go, Midge won't disturb him. But while returning, while after a walk, when they return back to home, then Midge will insist him to take him and put him on the wall. So Mitch will walk on the wall, 30-yard wall. He used to walk. So what happens in the school? All the children and the teachers, or the staff, those who are there, they all start watching him as he walks, as he jumps, as he plays, as he walks during the, on this 30-yard walk. So everybody were having a good company. Everybody were having a nice time with Midge. It is not, I suppose, in any way strange that the average Londoner should not recognize an otter, but the variety of guesses as to what kind of animal this might be came as a surprise to me. Otters belong to a comparatively small group of animals called mustelines, shared by the badger, mongoose, weasel, stoat, mink, and others. I faced a continuous barrage of conjectural questions that sprayed all the mustelines, but the otter, more random guesses, hit on a baby seal and a squirrel. Is that a walrus, mister? Reduced me to giggles, and outside a dog show I heard a hippo, a beaver, a bear cub, a leopard, one apparently that had changed its spots, and a brown-shirt. Midge was anything but an otter. So now in London, as I said, that people were not knowing what type of animal they are, but the narrator said that says that most of the Londoners may be knowing it, what is otter, what type of animal it is, but most of them used to ask, used to talk, and they used to speak about it in different manner. Some people used to think that it is not a, it is something kind of a what you call hippo, some kind of a squirrel, some kind of seagull. No, many types of animals they started talking about, but not an otter. So, but the narrator used to listen to them and smile at them. After hearing them, he used to be surprised that people are talking such a way. But the question for which I awarded the highest score came from a laborer. Digging a hole in the street, I was still far from him when he laid down his stool, put his hands on his hip, and began to stare. As I drew nearer, I saw his expression of surprise and affront, as though he would have me know that he was not one upon whom to play jokes. I came abreast of him. He spat, glared, and then growled out, "Here, mister, what is that supposed to be?" So again, the narrator was surprised again, that one day when he was walking, he saw a person digging, a hole, and when he saw him and the otter coming, he stopped his work, put his hand on his hip, and stood there. And as they came closer, he just asked a simple question, "Hello, mister, what is it?" So the narrator thought that, let me go and bang my head. People are still not knowing what animal it is. So friends, I believe you have understood the chapter well. Please go through the chapter once again. I will give the question answers tomorrow. Till then, stay home, stay safe, have a nice day.